One of the most famous plays from Shakespeare's lifetime is known as Dr. Faustus and was written by Christopher Marlowe. The front piece for this play is famous for how intricate and involved the image is, including a picture of the devil rising up out of the floor. It's pretty fantastic. However, if you glance back at the top of the left corner of this image, you'll see a curious little ball-shaped object. This is what's known as an Armillary sphere. They were popular in Shakespeare's lifetime, but do you know what they are or why they're considered important? Let's find out right now on That Shakespeare Life. This little sphere has roots in the ancient world and serves as a kind of star chart. It was a 3D model of the sky. They were built out of a series of rings that were all connected and could be centered around either the Earth, or some of them were built centered around the sun. The lines themselves represent celestial longitude or latitude, and one of the rings represents the path of the Earth as it travels around the sun. This was used as the basis for building out calendars, measuring astronomical information, and performing astrology. Now, I mentioned it could be centered around the Earth or the sun, and that's because at this time in history, there was a divide about exactly what was considered the center of the universe. If you recall, in 1610, Galileo observed the behavior of the planet Venus through his telescope and was able to conclude that based on her pattern, the sun must be the center that the planets orbit around. Poor Galileo was brought up against the Roman Inquisition for his research that disproved the Ptolemaic understanding of the universe and instead confirmed the Copernican idea that the sun was the center of the universe. Galileo was condemned as a heretic and excommunicated from the Catholic Church because of his beliefs. And this all happened in 1615, just 1 year before Shakespeare died. So Galileo and his condemnation over this belief system was a current event for Shakespeare's lifetime. It happened while Shakespeare was alive. The division and perspective that it was considered unbiblical to believe in a heliocentric universe. Now, that was a position held by the Catholic Church, and I haven't looked into whether or not Protestant England was okay with it or not, and that is something worthy to be researched further. But the separation between Ptolemaic version and Copernican version is why you'll see amillary spheres labeled as either a Ptolemaic amillary sphere, which is the one that goes around the Earth, or a Copernican amillary sphere, which is when the diagram has it going, all the planets going around the sun. In 1598, astronomer Tycho Brahe constructed 3 really huge amillary spheres, and he used them to get hyper precise about the location of stars and planets. He wrote about all of his observations in a book called Astronomiae. Okay, so here's where my Latin fails me, but Astronomiae Instauratae Mechanica. I'll write that down for you below the show notes if you're like me and you're a little rusty on the Latin. You can Google it and find it that way. During the Renaissance, and thereby during Shakespeare and Marlowe's lifetime, the amillary sphere was a symbol for the ultimate in wisdom and knowledge. If you had one of these, it showed that you were just a really learned, smart person. And that's why there are a lot of official portraits from this time period of people having the artist paint them either holding or standing near one of these amillary spheres. And that's because it was a status symbol, so to speak. It showed that you were well read, you were wise, you were this really intellectual person if you had one of these or knew how to use it. So someone like Dr. Faustus in the play would have definitely had an amillary sphere because it represented that he was supposed to be this learned man, this wise person, lots and lots of knowledge, right, was the image that you wanted to associate with Dr. Faustus. Now, with the whole conjuring up of the devil thing, I'll leave you to the philosophical implications there of what Marlowe might have intended you to think about Dr. Faustus, but that's why the frontispiece for this play includes an amillary sphere, and you will see this image repeated a lot throughout history, and they always include this amillary sphere. If you're interested in more information on celestial happenings from Shakespeare's lifetime, including the comet Nishimura that struck across the sky in 1590, you can learn whether or not Shakespeare would have been able to see that comet in this video that's on the screen now. I made an entire episode about that comet in particular, and you can click here to get started exploring that 16th century phenomenon.